The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never been so quiet. Ambassador Cathara stood at the center of the circular chamber, her blue skin pale with fear. Around her, representatives from dozens of worlds sat in stunned silence. The holographic display above them showed the same terrible image over and over again. Red dots marking dead worlds. 17 star systems gone in just 3 months. The Vorthak swarm was coming and nothing could stop them. Cathara's voice shook as she spoke. The outer rim is lost. Our combined fleets have been destroyed. The Vorthak ships heal themselves, faster than we can damage them. Their numbers seem endless. A low rumble came from Admiral Thies of the Andromedan Navy. His gray skin was covered in scars from a dozen wars, but Cathara had never seen such fear in his eyes. My third fleet engaged them at Kepler Station 3 days ago. We had 200 ships. Only 12 escaped. Ambassador Zephyr of the Silicon Collective flickered nervously. His crystal body caught the light from the display above. The bioships adapt to our weapons. Energy shields that worked yesterday are useless today. Kinetic rounds that pierced their hulls last week bounce off them now. The chamber erupted in panicked voices. Some called for evacuation of the core worlds. Others demanded they surrender and hope for mercy. A few suggested hiding in the deep void until the swarm passed. Cathara raised her hand for silence. When the voices died down, she spoke the words she had hoped never to say. There is one option we have not discussed. The chamber fell silent. Again, everyone knew what she meant. The humans, whispered Council Prime Velhan. The ancient being's tentacles writhed with distress. You speak of asking the humans for help. Cathara nodded slowly. Their most powerful warship, the one they call the Blackstar. A shiver ran through the assembled representatives. Humanity had joined the Galactic Council 50 years ago, but they were still feared. Most species had developed space travel through peaceful exploration. They built ships to carry scientists and diplomats. They made friends with their neighbors and shared knowledge. Humans were different. They had crawled out of their gravity well after centuries of war. Their ships were built to kill. Their first contact with alien life had been when they destroyed a pirate fleet that was attacking a trade convoy. They did not ask questions first. They did not try to communicate. They simply opened fire and kept shooting until nothing was left. The galaxy had welcomed them anyway. Human ships kept the trade routes safe. Human soldiers stood guard on dangerous borders. Human engineers built weapons that made everyone sleep better at night. But they were still frightening. Admiral Thies leaned forward. I have heard stories about this Blackstar. They say it can destroy entire fleets alone. They say it carries weapons that can crack planets. Stories, muttered Zephyr. Humans love their scary stories. But Cathara had seen the classified reports. She had read the intelligence files that only the highest levels of government were allowed to see. The Blackstar was real and it was everything the stories claimed and more. The humans have been our allies for 50 years, she said. They have never broken a treaty. They have never failed to honor their agreements. If we ask for help, they will come. Council Prime Velhan's ancient voice was barely a whisper, and if we do not ask, we will all die anyway. The vote was taken in silence. Each representative pressed a button on their chair. Green for yes, red for no. The display above showed the results as they came in. Green, green, green. Not a single red light appeared. Unanimous. For the first time in the Council's history, a vote was unanimous. Cathara sent the message herself. It was short and simple. The Galactic Council was under attack by an unknown enemy. 17 worlds had fallen. The combined fleets had been destroyed. They requested immediate military assistance from Earth's most powerful warship. The reply came back within hours. Just a few words on a black screen. The Blackstar is en route. Estimated arrival, 72 hours. No questions asked. No demands for payment or political favors. No requests for more information. The humans had simply said yes and sent their deadliest ship. 71 hours later, the ship arrived. Cathara stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the long-range sensors. The human ship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. and every alarm on every ship started screaming at once. The Blackstar was huge, 3 kilometers of dark metal that seemed to swallow light itself. Its hull was smooth and angular, like a blade made of shadow. No lights showed on its surface. No energy signatures leaked from its engines. It was like looking at a hole cut out of space itself. "By the void," whispered Admiral Thias over the communication channel. "Look at the size of that thing." The gathered fleet was impressive. 200 ships from a dozen species, representing the last major naval force in the galaxy. But next, to the Blackstar they looked like toys. Admiral Thias opened a channel to the human ship. "This is Admiral Thias of the Galactic Defense Fleet. We are honored by your presence. Please respond." Silence. He tried again. "Blackstar, this is Fleet Command. We need to coordinate our battle plans. The enemy could arrive at any time." Still nothing. Hours passed. The Admiral sent message after message. He tried every communication, frequency. He used formal military protocols and casual greetings. He even tried speaking in the few words of human language he knew. The Blackstar hung in space like a monument to death itself. It did not respond to any message. It did not acknowledge any transmission. It simply existed, silent and terrible, and utterly unmoving. "What are they waiting for?" Cathara asked her tactical officer. The young Centauri shook his head. "Unknown, Ambassador. Their ship shows no signs of activity. Engines are cold. Weapons are powered down. It is as if no one is aboard." But someone was aboard. Cathara could feel it. Somewhere inside that black ship, humans were waiting. The deadliest warriors in the galaxy sat in the dark, watching, listening, preparing for something. The question was, what were they waiting for? 24 hours passed with no word from the Blackstar. Then 36. The human ship remained, as silent as the grave, giving no sign that it even knew other ships were present. Admiral Thias grew more frustrated with each passing hour. "They asked us to call for help," he said during the daily command meeting. "We called. They came. Now they ignore us completely. What kind of allies are these?" But Cathara remembered something from the intelligence files. Something about human military protocols. Something about authorization codes and command structures that other species did not understand. She had a terrible feeling that they were missing something important. Something that would make the difference between victory and total destruction. The fear, Fourth-Act Swarm was coming, and Earth's deadliest ship sat silent in the dark, waiting for something that might never come. The first Fourth-Act ships appeared without warning. One moment the long-range sensors showed empty space, and the next moment they showed hell itself. They came out of hyperspace like a swarm of angry wasps. Hundreds of bioships, each one different from the others. Some looked like giant insects with wings of living metal. Others resembled sea creatures from the deepest oceans, all tentacles and teeth and glowing organs. A few were simply masses, of flesh and bone shaped into weapons of war. "Contact!" shouted the sensor operator on Admiral Thias's flagship. "Multiple hyperspace exits detected. Counting 500. No, 800. The numbers keep climbing." Cathara watched from her own bridge as more and more enemy ships poured out of the void. Each Vorthak vessel pulsed with its own inner light. Bioelectric patterns ran across their hulls like neural networks. They were alive, and they were hungry. "All ships, this is Admiral Thias," came the voice over the fleet communication channel. "Form attack formation Delta 7. Prepare for combat. Target the largest ships first." The Galactic fleet moved to engage. 200 ships against what looked like thousands. The odds were terrible, but they had no choice. Behind them lay the core worlds of the galaxy. Behind them were billions of innocent people who had nowhere else to run. Admiral Thias opened another channel to the Blackstar. His voice was desperate now. "Human vessel, we need your help. The enemy is here. Please respond." The Blackstar remained silent. It hung in space like a dark monument, its engines cold, its weapons powered down. It did not move. It did not react. It simply watched as the enemy fleet spread out across the system. The first exchange of fire lit up the darkness. Energy beams and plasma bolts crossed the void like deadly lightning. The galactic ships fought bravely, but it was clear from the first moment that they were outmatched. A Vorthak biocruiser took direct hits from 3 destroyers. The energy blast tore holes in its living hull. Green fluid leaked out into space like blood. But even as Cathara watched, the wounds began to close. New tissue grew to fill the gaps. Within minutes, the ship was whole again. "Their healing rate is incredible," reported her tactical officer. "They regenerate damage faster than we can cause it." Worse, the Vorthak ships were learning. Each time a galactic weapon found its mark, the bioships adapted. Energy shields that worked in the first attack were useless in the second. Armor that cracked under kinetic bombardment grew thicker and stronger. Admiral Thys watched in horror as his carefully planned formation fell apart. The Vorthak ships moved like a single organism, flowing around strong points and striking at weak ones. They surrounded isolated vessels and tore them apart with living weapons that shifted and changed with each attack. "Flagship Meridian is down," came a panicked voice over the communication channel. "Hull breach on 17 decks. We're losing atmosphere. Formation 7 Alpha, pull back," ordered another captain. "They're cutting through our shields like they're not even there." The retreat began before anyone officially ordered it. Ships that had stood firm against pirates and raiders for decades turned and fled from the advancing swarm. Some tried to maintain formation. Others simply ran for the edge of the system. Cathara opened a channel to the Blackstar again. Her voice cracked with emotion. "Please, we're dying out here. If you have any honor, any compassion at all, help us." The human ship did not respond. It sat in the middle of the battle like a sleeping giant, untouched by the chaos around it. Several Vorthak ships had passed close enough to attack it, but they seemed to ignore it completely, as if it was not worth their attention. In the midst of the slaughter, Cathara noticed something that made her blood run cold. A massive Vorthak dreadnought was moving toward a crippled hospital ship. The medical vessel was helpless, its engines dead, its weapons offline. It carried thousands of wounded from the outer colonies. Civilians who had already lost everything. The hospital ship tried to send out a distress call, but its main communication array was damaged. Only the emergency beacon was working, broadcasting on all frequencies with a weak signal. Cathara watched the Vorthak dreadnought line up its attack. The bioship was huge, a kilometer of living death shaped like some prehistoric predator. Weaponing. Clusters along its flanks began to glow with deadly energy. "No," she whispered. "Not the civilians." The hospital ship's emergency beacon continued to broadcast. Through the static and interference, a human voice could be heard. Young and frightened, probably a medical intern who had never seen combat before. Is anyone out there?" the voice said. "This is Dr. Marcus Webb aboard the hospital ship Hope's Light. We've got 3,000 wounded here and the engines are dead. There's a big alien ship coming toward us. We need help. Please, somebody help us. We can't fight back. We can't even run." The voice repeated the message over and over, growing more desperate each time. "Please, somebody help us. We need help. Is anyone listening? We need help." Admiral Thys heard the transmission and opened fire on the Vorthak dreadnought, but his ships were too far away. His weapons fell short of the target. Other vessels tried to change course to intercept, but they were engaged with enemy ships of their own. The dreadnought's weapons began to charge. Energy built up along its bioweapon clusters like blood pumping through veins. In seconds it would fire. The hospital ship would be destroyed, and 3,000 innocent people would die. Cathara closed her eyes. She could not watch. But then, something impossible happened. The Blackstar moved, not slowly like a ship coming to life from cold space, not gradually, like engines warming up after a long wait. The human vessel simply exploded into motion like a predator that had been waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Its engines flared to life with such intensity that nearby ships had to adjust their sensors to avoid being blinded. Energy readings spiked off the scale. The dark hull suddenly blazed with running lights and weapon signatures. And, across every communication channel in the system, a calm human voice spoke. "This is Commander Elena Vasquez of the UES Blackstar. We have the field. All Allied vessels maintain distance and mark targets. Medical vessel Hope's Light. This is Blackstar. We see you. Stand by for immediate assistance. The transformation was terrifying to watch. The silent monument became a weapon of mass destruction in the space between one heartbeat and the next. Systems that had been dormant suddenly came online with power readings that made no sense. The Vorthag dreadnought never had a chance to fire. A beam of pure antimatter lanced out from the Blackstar and cut the bioship in half. The massive vessel simply ceased to exist, vaporized so quickly that there was not even debris left behind. Then the Blackstar turned its attention to the rest of the swarm. What happened next was not a battle. It was an execution. Weapons that defied classification tore through the Vorthak fleet like paper. Gravitational pulses crushed entire squadrons into tiny points of light. Energy cannons fired beams that seemed to ignore shields and armor entirely. The human ship moved through the enemy formation like death itself, never missing, never hesitating, never showing mercy. In 10 minutes, it was over. The Vorthak swarm that had destroyed 17 worlds fled into hyperspace, leaving behind only wreckage and the memory of terror. The Blackstar settled back into position and went silent once more. But now everyone in the fleet understood the truth. The most dangerous ship in the galaxy had been waiting for a human voice to call for help. And when that voice finally came, it had awakened something that made the darkness itself tremble. The silence after the battle was deafening. Where moments before the void had been filled with weapons fire and death screams, now there was only the soft hum of ship engines and the quiet breathing of survivors. Admiral Thys sat in his command chair, staring at the tactical display. The red dots marking Vorthak ships were gone, all of them. 800 biovessels that had seemed unstoppable just minutes ago had either been destroyed or fled into hyperspace. One ship had done this. One human ship. Damage report, he said, quietly to his bridge crew. 17 ships destroyed, his tactical officer replied. 43 heavily damaged. Casualties are still being counted, but early estimates suggest over 12,000 dead or wounded. Admiral Thys nodded slowly. It could have been much worse. Without the Blackstar, it would have been total annihilation, but the cost was still terrible, and the victory felt hollow. Cathara opened a communication channel to the human ship. Her hands shook as she pressed the controls. Commander Vasquez, this is Ambassador Cathara of the Centauri Federation. Thank you for your assistance. We owe you our lives. The response came immediately. Commander Elena Vasquez appeared on the main screen, and Cathara was surprised by what she saw. The human woman was older than expected, with gray streaks in her black hair and lines around her dark eyes. Scars marked her face and neck, telling stories of old battles and hard choices. Ambassador, Commander Vasquez said with a slight nod. The immediate threat has been neutralized. Our sensors show no additional enemy contacts in this system. Commander, we need to understand what happened here. Admiral Thys cut in. His voice was tight with controlled anger. We've been calling for help for 2 days. Why didn't you respond earlier? Lives could have been saved. Commander Vasquez looked at him with steady eyes. The Blackstar has protocols, Admiral. It only activates for human authorization. No exceptions. The words hit the gathered fleet commanders like a physical blow. Cathara felt her breath catch in her throat. You mean your ship won't respond to anyone but humans? That is correct. Admiral Thys stood up from his chair, his gray skin flushing with rage. Thousands died while you sat there doing nothing. We're supposed to be allies. We are allies, Commander Vasquez replied calmly. But the Blackstar carries weapons capable of destroying planets. We cannot allow such power to be used by anyone else, for any reason. The communication channel erupted with angry voices from other ships. Captains and commanders who had watched their crews die demanded explanations. Some called the humans cowards. Others accused them of betrayal. Commander Vasquez waited for the shouting to die down before she spoke again. I understand your anger, but you must understand our position. The weapons on this ship could sterilize entire star systems. They could destabilize suns and crack moons in half. In the wrong hands, they could end civilization itself. Kethara found her voice. But we're your allies. We fight together, we die together. How can you not trust us? For the first time, something like sadness crossed Commander Vasquez's face. Trust is not the issue, Ambassador. This is about responsibility. Humans created these weapons. Humans must bear the burden of using them. The screen went dark. The Blackstar had ended the communication. Over the next few hours, as the fleet began rescue operations and damage repairs, the full scope of what had happened became clear. Intelligence officers analyzed the battle recordings. Scientists studied the energy signatures from the human weapons. Military strategists tried to understand how one ship had done what an entire fleet could not. The results were terrifying. The Blackstar had not used its full power, not even close. The weapons it had fired were just a fraction of its true capabilities. Hidden deep in its hull were devices that could manipulate gravity itself, antimatter cannons that could punch holes through spacetime, and energy projectors that could ignite the atmosphere of entire planets. It was not just a warship. It was a weapon of mass extinction. Captain Torres of the medical frigate Mercy called an emergency meeting of senior officers. She had served with humans before and understood them better than most. "They're not trying to insult us," she said to the gathered commanders. "This is how humans think. They've seen what unchecked power can do." "What do you mean?" asked Admiral Thiss. Captain Torres pulled up historical files on her display. Before humans reached the stars, they spent centuries fighting each other. They built weapons that could destroy their own planet. They came very close to wiping themselves out completely. They learned hard lessons about power and responsibility. The files showed images from Earth's history: nuclear explosions that turned cities into glass, chemical weapons that poisoned entire regions, biological plagues that killed millions. The humans had done all of this to themselves. They don't keep these weapons from us because they think we're weak, Captain Torres continued. They keep them from us because they know how dangerous they are. Even they don't trust themselves with such power. On the Blackstar itself, Commander Vasquez walked through the ship's corridors. The vessel was massive, with entire sections devoted to weapons that other species had never even imagined. In the deepest levels, behind multiple security barriers, lay devices that could tear holes in reality itself. Her crew was small for such a large ship. Only 300 humans aboard a vessel that could hold 10,000. But every one of them had been chosen for their ability to make hard choices. Every one of them understood the weight of the power they carried. Dr. Sarah Chen, the ship's chief science officer, met her in the observation deck. Through the transparent aluminum windows, they could see the Galactic fleet continuing its rescue operations. "They hate us now," Dr. Chen said quietly. "Some of them do," Commander Vasquez agreed. "But they're alive to hate us. That's what matters. The Council will demand explanations. They'll want access to our technology. They'll say we can't be trusted as allies if we won't share our most powerful weapons." Commander Vasquez nodded. She had expected this. It was the same conversation that had played out on Earth 50 years ago, when humanity first joined the galactic community. The other species had welcomed human protection but feared human power. "Let them demand," she said. "The Blackstar's mission is not to make friends. It's to protect civilization. Sometimes that means protecting civilization from itself." A communication alert sounded. The bridge was calling with urgent news. "Commander," came the voice of her tactical officer. "We're receiving long-range transmissions from the Outer Rim. The Vorthak are massing for another attack, but this time they're not alone. Something bigger is coming, something that makes the swarm look like a scouting party." Commander Vasquez closed her eyes. She had hoped they would have more time. Time to repair relationships with the other species. Time to prepare proper defenses. Time to find another way. But time had run out. The real enemy was coming, and when it arrived, the galaxy would need the Blackstar more than ever. The question was whether the other species would accept human help, or whether fear and pride would doom them all. In the depths of space, ancient sensors detected the approaching threat, ships the size of moons, weapons that could devour stars. An enemy so old and so powerful that entire galaxies had fallen before them. The Devourers were waking up, and they were hungry. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was the largest in history. Representatives from every surviving world had gathered, either in person or by holographic projection. The great chamber buzzed with angry voices and fearful whispers. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the center of it all, facing a storm of accusations. As Earth's ambassador to the Council, she had the unenviable task of explaining why humanity's most powerful weapon had sat silent while thousands died. "Your ship could have saved lives," shouted Ambassador Zephyr, his crystal body flickering with rage. "Instead, it watched our people burn. The Centauri Third Fleet was annihilated while your precious Blackstar did nothing," added Commander Hask of the Reptilian Alliance. "What kind of allies abandon their friends in the darkest hour?" Dr. Chen waited for the angry voices to quiet down. She was a small woman with kind eyes, but she had faced hostile crowds before. During the early days of first contact, many humans had opposed joining the galactic community. They feared losing their independence, their identity, their way of life. "I understand your anger," she said calmly. "But you must understand our position. The Blackstar represents the most dangerous technology humanity has ever created. We cannot allow such weapons to be used by anyone else." Council Prime Velhan raised one ancient tentacle for silence. The chamber gradually quieted. "Explain these protocols, Ambassador. Why does your ship only respond to human voices?" Dr. Chen activated her personal display. Images appeared in the air above her head. Pictures from Earth's history that made several alien representatives gasp in shock. "Before we reached the stars, humans spent thousands of years fighting each other," she began. "We created weapons of incredible destruction. Nuclear bombs that could destroy entire cities. Chemical agents that poisoned the air itself. Biological weapons that killed without discrimination. The images showed the aftermath of ancient wars. Cities reduced to rubble. Landscapes scarred by poison. Hospitals filled with the victims of humanity's own cruelty. We came very close to destroying ourselves completely," Dr. Chen continued. "Multiple times. Only luck and the wisdom of a few leaders saved our species from extinction." Ambassador Cathara leaned forward in her seat. "But that was your past. You've changed. You've grown beyond such barbarism." "Have we?" Dr. Chen asked quietly. "The weapons on the Blackstar make our ancient nuclear bombs look like children's toys. A single shot from our main cannon could crack a moon in half. Our antimatter torpedoes could ignite the atmosphere of a planet. In the wrong hands, such weapons could end all life in this galaxy." The chamber fell silent. Many of the representatives had fought in wars, but they had never imagined weapons of such scale. Dr. Chen changed the display to show technical readouts from the Blackstar. Energy signatures that reached into theoretical ranges, weapon systems that most species couldn't even understand. "The protocols exist to protect everyone," she said, "including humanity. We know what happens when ultimate power falls into the wrong hands. We've seen entire civilizations destroy themselves with weapons they couldn't control. But the explanations weren't enough. Over the following days, as rescue operations continued and casualty reports mounted, anger toward humanity grew. Some species called for economic sanctions against Earth. Others demanded that human vessels be banned from Council space. The worst came from species that had lost the most. The Centauri Federation had seen 3 of their core worlds evacuated as refugees. The Andromedan Navy had lost half their fleet. The Silicon Collective's trade networks were in ruins. "They ask us to trust them," said Ambassador Rillick of the Aquarian States during a private meeting. "But they will not trust us with their own technology. How can we call them allies?" Admiral Thiss was even more direct. "They came to our rescue, yes, but only after letting thousands die. What good are weapons if they arrive too late? In the depths of space, far from the political arguments, Intelligence officers were discovering something far more terrifying than Vorthak bioships. Long-range sensors were picking up massive energy signatures from the outer darkness, things that moved through space like living nightmares. Captain Martinez of the scout ship Horizon sent the first clear report. Her voice shook as she transmitted her findings back to Fleet Command. "Command, this is Captain Martinez. We've reached the edge of the Vorthak retreat path. What we found here, I don't think the Vorthak were invading us. I think they were running from something." The images she sent back defied understanding. Ships the size of small moons, creatures that seemed to be made of living darkness. Energy, readings that suggested technology far beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. "We count at least 50 large vessels," Martinez continued. "But our sensors may not be detecting everything. These things seem to bend space around themselves. They're moving toward the core systems and nothing we have can stop them." The analysis teams worked frantically to understand what they were seeing. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the Blackstar science officer, reviewed the data with growing horror. "These are devourers," she told Commander Vasquez. "We've found references to them in ancient archives. They're older than our galaxy. They consume entire star systems, turning matter into energy to feed their endless hunger." Commander Vasquez studied the tactical displays. "Numbers? Unknown. Our best guess is several hundred capital ships, with support vessels numbering in the thousands. They've already consumed the outer spiral. 3 entire sectors are just gone." On the hospital ship Hope's Light, Dr. Marcus Webb continued treating wounded from the earlier battle. But he also listened to the communication chatter from the scout ships. What he heard filled him with dread. The young medical intern who had called for help during the Vorthak attack was now watching reports of something infinitely worse approaching. The Devourers weren't just conquering worlds. They were eating them, converting entire planets into fuel for their impossible journey. Across the void, "How long do we have?" he asked his supervising physician. 3 days, maybe 4. They're moving faster than anything we've ever recorded. Our fastest ships can't outrun them." Dr. Webb looked out the observation window at the Blackstar floating silently nearby. The human ship looked tiny compared to the Devourer vessels in the intelligence reports. How could one ship, even one as powerful as that, stand against creatures that devoured galaxies? Back on the Council Station, emergency sessions continued around the clock. Plans were made and discarded. Evacuation routes were plotted. Some species prepared to flee to other galaxies hoping to outrun the approaching doom. But Dr. Sarah Chen stood before the Council one more time with a different proposal. "The Blackstar alone cannot stop this threat," she admitted. "But it was never meant to fight alone. For 50 years we've worked alongside your fleets. We've learned from your tactics and your courage. We've seen how different species can accomplish together what none could do alone." She paused, looking around the chamber at representatives who had trusted humanity once and felt betrayed. "The protocols that govern our weapons exist for good reasons, but protocols can be changed when the survival of all civilization is at stake. We're prepared to authorize joint operations against the Devourers, human weapons under Allied command, but it will require trust from both sides." The chamber erupted in heated debate. Some saw it as humanity finally accepting their responsibility as allies. Others viewed it as too little, too late. But in the end, they had no choice. The Devourers were coming, and the galaxy's only hope lay in weapons that answered to human voices. The question was whether anyone would be brave enough to speak when the time came. The Devourers arrived like death itself. They came out of hyperspace not as individual ships but as a living wall of darkness that stretched across half the system. Each vessel was the size of a moon, covered in what looked like organic armor that pulsed with its own evil light. Captain Martinez watched from her scout ship as entire asteroids simply vanished when they touched the enemy fleet. Not destroyed, not broken apart, but consumed, converted into pure energy to feed the creature's endless hunger. "All ships, this is Admiral Thess," came the voice over the emergency channel. "The enemy has arrived in overwhelming numbers. All vessels are to implement Evacuation Protocol 7. We cannot win this fight." But even as he spoke, Admiral Thess knew there was nowhere to run. The Devourers moved faster than any ship the galaxy had ever built. They would catch the fleeing vessels long before they reached safety. On the refugee world of Haven Prime, 10 billion souls looked up at the sky and saw their doom approaching. The planet held survivors from dozens of destroyed worlds, children who had lost their parents, elderly beings who had nowhere else to go. They had fled here hoping for safety, but the darkness had followed them. Young communications officer Veltar sat at his post in the orbital defense station, watching his instruments with growing horror. The enemy fleet was beyond counting. Thousands of massive ships, each one capable of cracking planets. His hands shook as he reached for the communication controls. He had been thinking about this moment ever since the emergency protocols were announced. Dr. Chen had said joint operations were possible, but only with human authorization. But Veltar was not human. He was Altarian, with blue skin and large eyes, adapted for his homeworld's dim star. The Blackstar would not respond to his voice. It would not respond to anyone who was not human. The defense station shuddered as the first Devourer ships entered weapons range. Energy beams that could melt continents lanced out from the enemy fleet. Orbital platforms that had protected Haven Prime for decades were swept away like dust. Veltar opened a communication channel to the Blackstar. Human vessel, this is Haven Prime Defense Control. 10 billion people are going to die. Please respond. Silence. He tried again, his voice breaking with desperation. Blackstar, I know you can hear me. I know your protocols. But there are children. Down there. Babies who have never seen war. Please, if you have any compassion at all, help us. Still nothing. The human ship hung in space like a monument to mankind's power and mankind's cruelty. Veltar watched his tactical display as more defense stations were destroyed. The planetary shield generators were failing one by one. Soon the Devourers would begin consuming the planet itself, turning 10 billion lives into fuel for their journey. In desperation, he opened another channel. This one went directly to the Blackstar's bridge. Commander Vasquez, he said, tears streaming down his blue cheeks. My name is Veltar. I have served with humans before. I have fought beside your people. I have seen your courage and your honor. I know you're listening. I know you want to help, but your protocols won't let you. On the Blackstar's bridge, Commander Vasquez sat in her command chair, listening to every word. Her crew watched her, waiting for orders that she could not give. The protocols were clear. No exceptions. No matter how many died. But as she listened to Veltar's voice, something in her began to break. I understand why you have these rules, Veltar continued. I understand why humans fear their own power. But sometimes rules must be broken to save what matters most. Sometimes we must trust each other, even when it's dangerous. Commander Vasquez closed her eyes. In her mind, she could see the refugee camps on Haven Prime. She could imagine the children looking up at the sky as death approached. She could hear their voices calling for help that would never come. The protocols existed for good reasons. They had been written by people who understood the dangers of unlimited power. They had been approved by the highest levels of Earth's government. Breaking them would be treason. It would be the end of her career, and possibly her life. But 10 billion people were about to die. She opened a direct channel to Veltar. When she spoke, her voice was calm and steady, despite the enormity of what she was about to do. Communications Officer Veltar, she said. This is Commander Elena Vasquez of the UES Blackstar. I am authorizing you to speak with my voice. Repeat, exactly what I say. Veltar's eyes widened with understanding. I understand, Commander. This is Commander Elena Vasquez of the UES Blackstar, she said slowly and clearly, authorizing full combat engagement against all hostile forces. All human personnel implement Protocol Omega. Protect the innocent at all costs. Veltar repeated every word perfectly, his Altarian accent giving the human words a strange but unmistakable quality. The Blackstar responded instantly. What happened next was beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. The human ship didn't just attack the Devourer fleet. It rewrote the laws of physics in local space. Gravitational weapons tore holes in reality itself. Antimatter cannons fired beams that ignored distance and time. Energy projectors reached into parallel dimensions and pulled out forces that should not have existed. The Devourers, ancient creatures that had consumed 1,000 galaxies, found themselves facing something they had never encountered before. Human ingenuity combined with human desperation. Weapons that had been built not just to destroy but to protect. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Devourer fleet was gone. Not destroyed, not defeated, but banished to the spaces between dimensions where they could never threaten the galaxy again. But the victory came at a terrible cost. The Blackstar's exotic weapons were drained. Its hull was cracked and bleeding atmosphere. Half its crew was unconscious from the strain of channeling such incredible power. Commander Vasquez slumped in her command chair, knowing she had saved 10 billion lives and probably doomed her own career. She had broken the most sacred protocols of the human fleet. She had given alien voices the power to command humanity's most dangerous weapons. But as reports came in from Haven Prime, as she heard the voices of children who would live to see another day, she knew she had made the right choice. In the aftermath, the galaxy began to change. The surviving species finally understood why humans guarded their power so carefully. It was not arrogance or mistrust. It was the weight of responsibility that came with ultimate power. New protocols were written. New agreements were signed. Humans would still control their most dangerous weapons, but now there were exceptions. When civilization itself was at stake, when all other options were exhausted, alien voices could speak with human authority. The Blackstar was rebuilt in Earth's orbital shipyards. Its hull bore the scars of the greatest battle in galactic history, and those scars were left as a reminder of the price of peace. And somewhere in its quantum computer cores, new programming was written, code that recognized not just human voices, but human values. Courage in the face of impossible odds, sacrifice for the greater good, the willingness to risk everything to protect the innocent. The galaxy was safe, but it would never be the same. And perhaps that was exactly what it needed to be.